All right, we are live with the Dev Talk Show on April 15th, 2020, here from darkened southeastern Pennsylvania. I was going to say sunny because I'm sitting in front of a sunny background, but it's not sunny here at all. Here with my co-host Rich Ross and Andy Schwam. How are you two doing tonight?
Doing great, Chris. How are you?
Good, good. So tonight we have a pretty exciting show, right? We're going to talk about the Azure SignalR service. But before we do that, how has the last week been for both of you? If you're watching us live on Mixer, Twitch, or YouTube, please, if you're signed in, you can join us in the chat. Let us know you're here. We definitely would love to hear from you. And if you're watching us in the future, then I'm sure by this time everybody knows that in April of 2020, most folks were working at home, staying at home, practicing a new term that we hadn't even heard a few months ago called social distancing. So, how's the last week been? We've had school starting here, school from home.
Yeah.
So it's been interesting, but it's been a lot of family time, right? So.
Yeah, and a lot of readjusting. So it's
yeah. Readjusting to a different work life, a different home life. All right. So, and we have Andy doing the production duties tonight, and you can tell he is listening intently to make sure that this audio sounds great and everything looks good. And look at that. There's the thumbs up. There's the thumbs up. So everything's good.
See, because we're paying attention to being able to carry on a conversation, keep the stream going. Andy's behind the scenes doing all the hard work of making sure there's no echo. There's no cross chatter, as it were. So,
yeah, right. So, hey, tonight we're going to talk. Let's go ahead and start talking about it. We're going to talk about Azure SignalR service, it's more than one technology brought together here. I mean, I have a history with SignalR. You could make a good argument that that's one of the reasons that I started giving a lot of talks, is that I was really excited when SignalR burst onto the scene, that I just couldn't wait to show everybody what it could do.
Mm-hmm. You had one of the really cool talks when you started doing that, which was everybody kind of goes and does that chat application, and you did wasn't like Othello or something like that, but it was something across a grid with a game, right? It
was heading towards being a board game type sample, because at that point in time I was also interested in HTML Canvas.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty new, and they were beginning to get some libraries that abstracted over top of it. And so I just did what I wanted to do, was put that together.
Right.
and I was waiting for a technology like SignalR. Previously, I was looking at, before that, if you wanted to do real time, you would usually rely on Flash or Silverlight or something like that. And I was looking at those, and I was using those. And then here came along, WebSockets weren't totally out there, but here came a library that said, hey, don't worry about that. We'll take care of the real-time connectivity, whether your client and server can talk WebSockets or not.
Right.
And so here we are today with SignalR brought to us with the power of Azure.
Yeah, and what's interesting is a lot of the skills and the things that you already know from the SignalR side of things are going to be useful in here. All we're doing is essentially taking what would be that hub component that you have that runs on your server when you think of the architecture of that SignalR component, where you've got your server-side code that would serve out pages to your clients, and you would have essentially a hub where all of your clients would connect into, and that would ride on whatever IIS box or whatever box is hosting the rest of your web application, right? It's all part of that same infrastructure. And while that's great, and it's easy to get up and running that way, where some of the complexities happen is, I don't know if you've had a production app like that you had to then take it and scale it out, right? How do you get that hub existing, maybe on multiple web front-end servers, right? How do you handle the routing of that traffic and the connection back to the hub with all of those? Right,
without relying on something like a sticky session, which doesn't help you too much generally in a SignalR scenario, because you may want all of your clients to be able to hear the same communications, and And yeah, so that was a problem solved in the ASP.NET and .NET Framework timeframe. They solved it with what were called backplanes. And there were a couple backplanes that shipped, one for SQL Server, one for Redis cache, I recall. Mm-hmm. And even though that worked, there were always problems. There were always issues. It just didn't quite, you sort of lost the scale out that we want in a cloud service. That kind of, you were sort of trapped. It was almost like you were back in web farm land.
Right.
And so I can't wait to see how Azure. It's easy for me to say. I can't wait to see how Azure SignalR service. Let's say that 3 times fast. Yeah. I can't wait to see how that helps us out here.
Yeah. So probably the best place to start, right, is to go out to the Azure portal and let's go ahead and spin up one of those Azure SignalR services, right?
All right.
So let me do this. Let me get back to home.
Hey
Make
guys,
sure
I could say hi while Rich is doing that.
Go for it. Hey, Andy.
So I am stressed out over here. I'll tell you that. Running this show is hard, man. And Rich does it in such a smooth way and doesn't show it at all. And I'm like, wow. As far as I don't know if the music even went in the beginning, but I think it might have.
I was listening to it on the stream. Yeah.
Okay, so somehow I had one of my monitors turned off, and I never even heard it. I'm like, Chris is going to kill me. I promised him there'd be an audio cue, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know what's great about this is, like, we're taking, I haven't taken one yet, but we're all working to take turns at doing this just because I don't think this is really the reason, but you could kind of say this is like the disaster recovery practice, right? Is we know Rich can run the show. And now we know Andy can run the show.
But it's a disaster if I run the show.
No. So it's just because we don't have that capability right now to go into the old reliable studio where everything was set up and in place. And it wasn't quite this simple, but Rich sure made it look this way as he sat down behind that awesome looking console and hit go, and we were live.
Yeah, and I didn't need to know anything more than that, except we're live. He'd point at us and we'd go, and it was much easier that way. But this actually sets us up for a much better future of there's always days when we weren't able to get down to the studio for one reason or another. One of us is busy, and we've got it all hammered out. And by the way, Mike Devaney's on Mixer, and he says awesome. It sounded good. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that feedback. Thanks, on Mike.
That. Awesome.
Yeah.
So do we need Rich's screen? Or
yeah, you want to go to Rich's screen? Okay. So
yep. So I'm interested to see Azure SignalR service, because my expertise with SignalR, my use with it, is just all. Gosh, I want to think of a good way to say this without making it more confusing. Is just having the web server itself be the SignalR hub host. Mm-hmm. I haven't gone beyond that, so now I'm excited to see this because I do want to move apps up there, and I do want to say, okay, if this scales out 2 or 3 web servers, this, I can't wait to see how this helps it sort of just work and take it out of my hands. So here we are in the portal, Rich.
Yep. So this is actually, I'm going to turn this on for those who haven't seen it. This is the extensions, and I have my favorite extension down here, Azure Mask, so that we can essentially protect the various secrets and information that I have inside of my subscription there. So I have that running. I can go back over to my Azure instance, and that will get those secrets in place there, or keep those secrets well hidden. Let's see. So let's just jump right into it. Let's go ahead and create a resource. SignalR service. And since we adequately named it, it drops and says, hey, this must be what you're talking about. So let's go ahead and do a create. And I'm going to take you out of this window, Chris, and bring you over there so that you can get one image of your camera. And then this is pretty much it. There's not a lot of information you need to provide in order to get this up and running. Obviously, we need a subscription. I'm going to go ahead and drop this in my usual place where I drop our demos into a resource group that we've named. I can, as with many of the services, there's a public endpoint here, and that public endpoint has to be unique across all of the other services that might be instantiated. So I could do something like that. Make sure I get the little green check mark. Yep, we're good. So that service is ready for us to go. I can certainly see if we can deploy it out here to East US. And then we start getting into pricing tiers. So that's where, if we look at, let's see if we go over here, and everybody's going to have different costs for what these are. But essentially, you can instantiate a free service and basically get a free instance of this up and running that you can use to test with. Gives you up to 20 connections. So having 20 clients connecting into that SignalR service and basically getting 20,000 messages a day. You also get the ability to do SSL connections across those too. For dev, that's probably perfect. And certainly for what we're doing here, that would be perfect as well. But when we think about scaling up and moving things into more of a production world, then we start getting into a standard model of, 100 units that you could put in place, having up to 1,000 connections per unit. So that can, those numbers can add up really quickly, especially having 1 million messages per day per unit inside of this environment. So I'm going to hit free, and we'll do select. And I'll pause there in case you guys have any questions as we walk through that.
Well, Mike Devaney on chat
did get a question. Yeah, go ahead.
Cool.
Yeah, he wants to know if units is equal to hub.
No. So you could have multiple units all pointing to the same hub, if I understand the question right.
Yeah.
So you might have. I mean, taking it back to kind of the example that we talked about, or some of the examples that I know, Chris, you've done, where I've got a web service. It has a hub in there for my SignalR service inside of my app. That hub that hub can be scaled out to essentially be 1 unit or up to 1,000 units.
So here's a good question, and I think, for example, I could build a SignalR app, and I could instantiate multiple hubs just because maybe I wanted to logically separate. For some reason, I have some reason that I want to logically separate the messages.
Yeah.
I don't really know why I would do that, but I don't know for sure how that plays with units. To me, a unit sounds like although I'm just getting this purely from what we're seeing here in the portal. A unit sounds to me kind of like the size of the backplane. Like, hey, I can handle, I'll handle 20 unique connections, and then the other, the unit said, hey, I'll handle 1,000 concurrent connections. And if you say, wow, I'm going to have more real time than that, then you have to scale up, right?
You have to add more units. Yeah.
Okay.
Same thing if the messages became a concern and the number of connections wasn't, but you knew you were going to have more than 1 million messages per day, then you would go ahead and scale up the units there, because that's on a per unit, you only get 1 million messages per day. Okay.
So what I'm hoping for, and I don't want to speak out of turn here, but just coming from my SignalR experiences, it sounds like I could have they're not connected. Logically, I can still separate my app into however many hubs I want, because I can't wait to see how this works in an app. It sounds like that's not connected to the service that I'm subscribing to. I'm subscribing to this SignalR service.
No. So what happens is, and we can talk a little bit about the kind of the underpinnings now, if it makes sense, because that's a good question. What you're doing here is essentially giving an endpoint for your SignalR activity to take place on. That doesn't have to be the app service where your SignalR hub code is running. So essentially, a client is going to come to your application. You'll see when we deploy the app, it's going to come to our service through the URL, and at some point, it's going to connect to the SignalR hub, or attempt to connect to the SignalR hub. What our code is going to do is say, yep, you want to talk SignalR? That's great. Here's what you need to do. I'm going to forward you over to the URL of our SignalR service that we have in place in Azure. And that's where all of your SignalR communications is going to take place going forward. So the clients initially talk to our application sitting in the app service, but then get pushed over towards the Azure SignalR service for all of that communication. And then the Azure SignalR service has a persistent WebSocket connection to our app service where our hub code is running. And then that connection stays up so that it can basically say, well, I've got incoming traffic here to your hub, run the process, run your code against this, and then send me the information back, and I'll broker it back down to the client.
Okay. Well, you know what? I bet you this will be a little clearer as we go. I mean,
yeah,
that's so we've talked a lot,
yeah,
but we haven't seen anything in action. Yeah.
And I probably should have talked that through as we were building up or letting the web service go ahead and get created. But this is where I can scale up my or use the slider essentially, or just enter the number of items that I want to place in there. So if I say I want 20 units, I can go ahead and do that. And then there's also a service mode, because by default, it's going to want a persistent connection with the app service where our code is going to live. But you have the capability of using not an app service to connect to, but maybe a function where your architecture is built on functions, and functions don't run all the time, or they have the option not to, where you only pay for the amount of time that that function code is actually up and running. So there's a serverless model here that lets you basically say, you're not going to always have a persistent connection to where my code runs, but if that's the case, then you could go ahead and select serverless, and this way it knows that connection may come and go.
Okay.
Let's see, it's validating our selections here.
So I'm being like really quiet. This is really weird for me. I'm like not used to being quiet, and like half of me is like, wow, I should be talking now, and the other half is like, no, pay attention to all this stuff that's going on. But I wanted to take a second to say, again, welcome to everybody that's watching that's watching us live. We are here Wednesdays. If you just stumbled upon us, Wednesday nights at 8:30 p.m. you could find us on Mixer, Twitch, and YouTube, and we appreciate everyone that's with us. And, again, join in the chat if you have questions or comments. If you're new, you'll see some of the regulars maybe chatting up with us. And it doesn't mean we're all welcome. Like, join in, ask some questions, joke around, whatever you want to do. We want this show to be, for all of us to learn and have some fun.
Yep, absolutely. All right.
All right. So besides a service, in order to take advantage of this, we need an app too.
Yep. That's a good point. So let's do this. Let's spin up a new instance of Visual Studio 2019. I'm going to go ahead and say create a new project. And we're just going to create a core web application, right? If we wanted to, we could certainly look at something like a Blazor app in the future or something along those lines. But I think a core app, given some of the samples that we're going to pull into here, are looking for that HTML page to use as the foundation instead of that Blazor HTML. So let's do that. Let's say next. Okay.
I remember like the first time I saw SignalR, because it's been around for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the first time I saw this, it was one of those like, whoa, that's so cool, right? And I guess in those days, and I don't know if you talked about this, I wasn't fully paying attention earlier. Whoa, VB, huh?
What?
Oh, all right.
Classic. What did I do?
This will be a fun show. Who wants to watch
Here
rich code in VB? VB.
No.
One of us.
Mike says, do it.
That would end horribly. What the heck did I click?
Now, did you want an ASP.NET Core web application?
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good because you picked console app, so this is probably better that we're starting over anyway.
Did you catch that sound effect, by the way?
One of us has made a gross error.
I did.
So while you're fixing that, I was saying that, again, maybe you talked about this in the beginning while I was setting things up, but Mike wants you to go with VB, by the way. Mike Devaney's like, do it, go for VB, I think is what he meant with that. That would be a show. I'm telling you, that would be a show. But I guess, there's different ways that SignalR connects, right? And I guess nowadays, I think browsers support the better ways of doing it that they didn't support in the beginning. Am I saying that right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, in the early days of SignalR, there were a couple other techniques. In fact, like Gmail was built on a technique called long polling.
That's what I thought.
Where the client essentially made an HTTP connection to the server and the server would just hold it. It would just sit on it and basically return it. Either it would time out and then the client code would make another one, or it would say, "Oh yeah, I've actually got a message for you. Like something's happened. You got a new email or something." And it took a little while, because there was a lot of things that had to go right for a WebSocket connection. You had to have the right OS, you had to have the right browser, you even had to have the right server. A router configuration could mess things up. But nowadays, I'm finding that when I set up a lot of SignalR apps and sort of look at like logs of client connections, that they're all going over WebSockets now.
Yeah,
but the thing that was great about SignalR is you didn't have to care.
Right. That's what I was saying when it came out. It was like it handled all that for you. It's like, well, listen, if you're running in an older browser, don't worry, we've got that covered for you. Now, I think a lot of that is sort of like rolled out and become less necessary now. When I say rolled out, I mean like sort of faded out, But it's so cool that you can have this like instant communication. I just think it's pretty slick.
Yeah,
definitely.
It's all right. So here we are, a brand new ASP.NET Core app.
Yeah,
in C#.
And we're gonna in C# this time. Yes. So we're going to start where our application starts, in the startup directory, and with our startup CS. So Razor pages are enabled by default. That's fine. One of the things that we need to do is we need to kind of change up a little bit of the configuration and some of the services that are included in here. So first service that we're going to add is our SignalR service. So we can do that. Now that kind of comes, and correct me if I have this wrong, Chris, but that comes with ASP.NET Core as part of that got included, I think maybe in 2.2, in somewhere around that time frame.
Yeah, I don't think there's any more go out and get some NuGet packages like it used to be.
Yes, well, until now.
No squigglies. So
that's cool. So I didn't realize that. I guess it's .NET Core.
It's .NET Core, and
so framework you probably need the packages still.
And yeah, you would still need the package for the framework. Yeah, but we could wire this up so that SignalR runs all locally inside of this app service inside of this web app that we would have running here locally. But what we're going to do is we want to talk to the SignalR service that we just put in place in Azure, and for that we're going to need a NuGet package. So I'm going to go into I manage NuGet, and there is a Microsoft.Azure.SignalR. Oh, I'm looking at installed. Look at browse.
There we go. That happens to me all the time. Yeah.
Right. Does anybody not do that? It's one of those, like, every time.
Yeah.
And every time I say, like, oh, wow, I wonder what happened to NuGet, there's suddenly no packages.
Yeah.
Yeah, NuGet's down. No, I'm an idiot.
Well, I guess NuGet's down. It's like, nope, wasn't NuGet.
Yeah. Yeah, Mike, you're not the only one. We all do it.
We can commiserate together.
Yeah, that's a lot of good thing about live streaming, I'm finding, is a lot of this commiseration that we all suffer from imposter syndrome, and we're all always thinking we can't get this figured out. And you watch these live streams and you see smart people, and I'm not talking about me in this case, I'm talking about like you guys or other people I watch, but like, I'm like, oh yeah, I see smart people, like they struggle. Okay, we're all in this together. Yep. This is not an easy job we have.
No, but this is, we all learn together. That's the beauty of it. So what we're going to do here is, in addition to adding SignalR to the service, we're going to go ahead and also add Azure SignalR to the service. And
that's cool.
What's that?
No, I didn't realize that it was another extension method that we got access to there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll be honest, I was waiting for configure services and some options and pointing to some endpoint or something. So, okay, cool.
So not so bad right now, right? Just that extra little method off of there and we're good to go. One of the things we do need to put in place there is, let's see, also need to, and I think this is where you were going, Chris, we have to put our endpoint in place.
Okay. But this isn't unusual. I'm just so if you're either coming from ASP.NET Framework's SignalR, or you have used SignalR with Core, then this isn't unusual. Having to say like go map the hub, basically create an endpoint for this hub and hang it off this endpoint. So that's not different. I guess kind of what I was thinking was some long-winded thing to make Azure work, but we'll see. I'll hold back. I'm not. Let's see what happens.
You're reserving judgment at this point?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to point out one of the small wins, you guys. That if I'm watching the chat more than you guys are, I think, and so Mike just pointed out he didn't realize that little feature you just used. You typed AASR.
Yeah.
Azure add Azure SignalR service, right? And this is one of those little things that I always say that whenever I do paired programming with somebody or I watch somebody program, forgetting about all the cool technical stuff we're really trying to do, there's always something little I learn, right? Yeah. And he didn't realize, and I said, well, that's cool, right? That's been in there a while. It's been in the box, I think, for a while now, that kind of IntelliSense shortcutting or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
But you can do that with those capital letters and stuff like that. And, that's what I always liked about Philly.net meetings. I would always learn something, even if it wasn't what I came to learn, that little tip. And I'd be like, I'm going home happy. I learned something.
That's right. And I think that's why I originally picked that up at some point. And especially when you start get those long, 4 or 5 word with, long words at that. And it's a quick way to reduce the list of potential options.
Especially when you're there in configure services and there's at least a couple dozen extension methods that are going to pop up that all start with add.
Right.
So you zoomed past them very quickly by saying, hey, here are the initials of the method.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think cool. I think the next thing we want to do is get our chat service up and running and kind of put that in place. So let's just do, we'll just do a quick folder. Nope, don't want to do that. And then inside of here, okay, so we just created our chat class. Obviously, since this is going to be where our SignalR service connects to or is looking for, we're going to make sure that it inherits from that hub class. And then inside of here, we can put whatever methods that we want to make sure that our SignalR service is prepared to handle, essentially. So for this quick demo, we want to do just 2 right now. We'll do one that does a global broadcast message, and that will take a string with the name of the person and a string with the message that is being sent.
The name of the person being the person sending the message.
Correct. Well,
because it's a broadcast message. It's going to everybody, right?
Right. So that broadcast message might be system, let's say. Potentially.
Okay. Potentially, yeah.
So we do clients. All, and since we're broadcasting, we're going to send that message out to all of those clients. And then this, when we put this in here, is going to match to essentially the JavaScript that is sitting on the client page that will get called when it does the broadcast out to everyone.
Okay.
And then name and message. Right, so really simple, easy broadcast to everyone, and then we'll do one that's a little more specific. Do another public void, echo, and then with the same properties of string message. And this one is going to be a specific client.
Hey, Rich, can you bump your font up a little bit when you get a sec?
Yeah.
It's a little. Yeah, it's a little. That'll make it a little easier to read, I think. Yeah, thanks. And you know what? I can go to a different screen.
You could also.
Yeah, I'm going to.
I don't know if it would help.
What's that?
Yeah, it may help to put us up to this there.
Yeah, I'll go to a slightly bigger screen, but I think the font still helps.
Absolutely. So we're going to basically, of the clients that are connected, we're going to talk to a specific client, and that is the one that matches based on the connection ID. Connection. And Chris, this all looks the same from when you would go ahead and do this in any of your other SignalR demos, right?
Yeah. They still have the same abstraction of clients.all or clients.client or clients. You could put clients in groups, but you're responsible for that. It depends on it depends on the logic of your application. There isn't a one size fits all way to do it, but yeah, it's very similar. Not a whole lot has changed, at least in this portion, from SignalR on .NET Framework. Yep. And if you're doing SignalR on ASP.NET Core, the fact that you're going to be on Azure SignalR service, there's no difference at all.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we've got our chat service that we can call into, so we're good there. One other, let's see, I have to go back to startup real quick and just make sure that we have static files. There's default files.
Okay. Yeah.
And we're also going to use routing. We need all three of those. I forgot to check that when we did those. And this chat, while we put it in there, it sits inside of a namespace. And now we've got that covered. Cool. So we should be able to do a build.
There's Karnak, by the way, showing you little keystrokes he put in there.
So this is great. So we've got a working build of at least the hub side of things. What I want to do though is that service that we created back in Azure. If we go back over it, should be done, and it is. We're going to go back to the resource itself. And you see and this will become really cool when we actually make the connection here, but you can see that we have a graph that will show us the connections. So not only the client connections, but also the servers that are connected into the SignalR service. So SignalR becomes that broker between the client connections and the underlying server where the code runs. And then we can have this one here that actually shows the number of messages that came through this particular service. But in order to know about this service, we've got to basically tell our code where this service lives. And to do that, we need to get some keys.
Okay.
So the keys here.
There you go, Azure Mask. Nice.
Yeah, secret keys for the win, huh?
Mm-hmm. Although you're going to see the connection string in a second when I paste it into, so there's no getting around that. 'Cause I'm not going to completely hide it. Let's see. So if we go back to our application, one of the things that I'm going to do that I'm not sure if we talked about it here on any of the shows that we've done, but I'm sure we all use it. But to protect those keys from getting checked into source code, whether, wherever it is that you store your source code, we want to take advantage of something called user secrets.
Yep.
And what that does is that essentially gives you your app settings, essentially, but it's stored in your app data on your machine and never gets checked in with the rest of the code. So
right. This is great because in the .NET Framework timeframe, I can attest to having been part of or witnessed or talked with many teams that, these keys would either end up in source control sometimes and say, oh, well, they don't. But we don't. When we go to publish, we take this file out. Okay, well, what if you forget Or maybe the team is conscious about it and says, no, we don't check those in. But, every time that I bring the code down and I have to go to work, I just add them to the web config myself. And then, of course, every once in a while, somebody checks them in.
Yeah, it's inevitable. It's going to happen.
Yeah, and so I love this built-in feature of ASP.NET Core, user secrets. Make sure you take a look at this if you're not looking at it already, because this secrets JSON is nowhere to be found in your code folder. So it's not going to show up in your Git status or anything. You're not going to accidentally commit it. It does mean that for the next developer, they're going to have to add a user secrets file and put these user secrets in, but that should be part of the developer onboarding documentation for your team.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know one of the things I will do is when I create a file like this, where it's just like a skeleton point, I would actually take that and drop that back into my app settings. Like, right, this already has some app settings in it, but I would essentially paste it into here so that those who come along after me realize that, okay, this is what the app settings should be. I may have to go find what those variables are from somewhere else, but at least I know what the structure is, what my code is going to be looking for.
Yeah.
Because this will get checked in.
Yeah, so Mike's asking, is that get ignored or is it handled by the framework? And so I think what Chris was saying was that it's not get ignored because it's not even in the folder structure at all, right?
Right. Like if you go hover over secrets.json, I think you're going to get the path to where it actually lives. I think if you hover over the tab.
Yeah.
And as Rich said a little bit earlier, it's actually sitting in your user's app data, roaming app data. So it's not anywhere near your source folder, at least not by default. You'd have to have, it's not typical. I don't think, I think you'd have to work pretty hard. So
it solves all those get ignore problems like we were talking about, where we've all been there.
So I think what they're trying to simulate here is this is a file. I feel like they're trying to simulate that this is a file that your production folks would put in place. It wouldn't be developer controlled because these secrets maybe are even managed by production folks, right?
Yeah.
And I use the word production folks because in your organization that might be developers, a DevOps type scenario. It might be, or you might have some IT folks who are setting up Azure. And so they would be the ones saying like, well, yeah, we've got an Azure SignalR service. We're going to link you up. And we will put that into the app settings JSON that's going to be published, but it never ends up in source control. So manage user secrets in Visual Studio, and you don't have to have Visual Studio to use manage user secrets. You can do it from other IDEs too. It's definitely in the docs.
Yes, and you don't even have to have access to the secrets file, right? You can just do the setting of those properties in the command line. But you can see here with that secrets that we've hovered over. That user secret file, that C63B7B, that essentially is what is the value here. So it's basically telling it, you know where to find the user secrets because it's configured. That's the file you're looking for.
That's cool.
So let's get back at it here. Sorry, I should have had zoom it up as well. All right, so let's go ahead and save this. Let's go back to our secrets. The one thing I'm going to, and I think I should have it. Paste. Nope, because I went and did that. So let's go back to here. Copy. And I can paste that in. So this is my endpoint to my service with the access key and everything else I need to go ahead and make that run. Now what happens is that's one connection. If I had multiple app service, Azure SignalRs that I wanted to potentially connect to, I could include all of those in there as because I've only named it. Sorry, let me back up. Because I've only named one connection in there, and it's defined as Azure SignalR connection string. It knows, go look in my settings and see if I have a value for that. And if I do, I'm just going to go ahead and use it. But if I don't, or if I have multiple versions, I can basically specify those inside of essentially when I instantiate this up. I can add multiple connection strings in here. And then as each one connects to the service, they can pass it out to essentially round robin them or pass them out to the whichever service, whatever service is up next, basically. So it's a way of scaling out even within the code that you have here if you've got multiple of those Azure SignalR services up and running.
A lot of flexibility in your setup here.
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah. So the user secrets way was just one way, and you could use the extension method itself to do whatever you needed to do.
Yep. All right. So we updated the startup file. We've got our chat class. We've got our secrets here, which I will save. I think the only thing we don't have is essentially some code inside of our page here.
Yeah. So, SignalR is always, it's two parts. It's hubs, and then it's also client code to talk to the hubs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The most painful part of every SignalR demo is that there's a fair amount of startup, and so you can't show anything awesome and make people gasp. It's like it just takes a little bit longer than you want, because you kind of sense after you finish the hubs and the config, you're like, okay, people are starting to fall asleep here, but I've still gotta do the client, and then once they start seeing the messaging fly back and forth between multiple windows, then they're awake again. They're like, oh wait, hold on.
I get this. Yeah. So here's where I at least from this page, and maybe we go and create a separate HTML page to handle this, but because we're in, I guess, a Razor page, essentially, it's looking at this and thinking that's a variable. And I know that if I don't have...
There's a way to escape that, right?
Well, that's what I thought.
2 @ in a row.
Is that what it is?
I think so.
I think he's right.
All right. He doesn't trust me. He's going to check it. He doesn't trust me.
I don't know. So I just wanted to show this is the code that comes back, right?
Yeah.
So I needed to. I mean, if I get rid of it, then it fails.
Work. Yeah.
Right.
I thought you were Googling it. I didn't. Yeah.
No.
I'm not positive. But yeah.
Well, that must happen on
no, not
side.
There. You can't double.
Yeah. It's not 2 @ there. Yeah, it's in the Razor. And so what's interesting is you're also using a CDN to quickly go out and get SignalR, basically by searching through the NPM package. So for folks that are a little familiar with NPM, this particular little bit of code is saying go to Microsoft SignalR's NPM repo and find 3.10's packages, and then dive into the dist browser SignalR min.js file and just go grab it. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple services that do it. This is one of them. There's also one that I always call unpackage. It's unpkg.
Yeah.
And I find it a quick way to get things running. I think in production, you probably want to take control of the code yourself. But, to get things going, I do the same thing you do. Also very useful if you're the kind of person that likes to maybe prototype with something like a GitHub Pages or maybe a code sandbox. It's not the same kind of environment where you're just pulling in files from wherever you want. You need a way to just basically say, hey, go get this.
Yeah.
So that's a technique that I use too. And I think Andy's right there that the double at will basically tell Razor, although I don't know though. Interesting.
Yeah.
We're going to find out.
We're going to find out. This is basically, you'll see it's a page that's a chat page, but what's to call back to what we did in the chat service, down, we have a function inside of our JavaScript here for broadcast message. We've got another one for echo, and then that's where those references, why we named what it's going to call back and talk to those particular words, because that's matches to the JavaScript function that's sitting on the page. All right.
So I guess if you wanted to customize those, you could, but why bother, right?
We could.
Yeah.
And see how much time we have left.
Yeah. Yeah, if we all get this working, we could examine because so it's funny, like we're talking about Azure SignalR service, but we're not going in depth into SignalR because certainly that's a whole show.
Yeah. And
especially working in the client. Yeah.
And to call out, you did a stream last Friday that was a show that was a lot about SignalR, wasn't it?
Yeah, on my stream, I'm starting to work on a project that's going to be a little game, and so it's a natural fit for SignalR. So certainly, I actually kind of want to take the SignalR parts of it and see if I can edit it down, because the stream was a little bit over 2 hours, and if I wanted to just narrow it down to just say like, here's SignalR, this was just the parts, it would probably just be 10 or 15 minutes. So anyways, yeah, so the app started.
Yeah.
It's running on your local host, but interestingly, even here in this development scenario, it should be using Azure SignalR service.
Right, as a connection. Yeah, let's see here.
Chris, what's your where's your channel? It's on Mixer, right?
Yeah, I've been streaming on Mixer. It's just my Xbox Live gamer tag here. I'm going to be able to type in the chat here.
Okay, I was going to do it for you, but go ahead. Yeah, share it with everybody.
All right, let's reset.
I wasn't sure if it's Space Shot or if it's I couldn't remember. I was looking.
All right, let's try this. There we go. So I got a response back from the service that says I joined the chat.
Cool.
And then I can do hello.
Cool.
Okay. Now,
and
go ahead.
What makes it super exciting is now a second browser.
Right. So we'll do that first. Hang on to that thought. So if I go back over here, copy this. So an in private browser. I probably just do this. You can see them all side by side, right? Mm-hmm. So
yes.
Messages can route back and forth. If you want, we can try one other thing. Let's do this. Launch up a new one of these.
That's the new Windows terminal there, and you're in PowerShell.
Yeah. CD dev,
no cool background, image in there, but all right.
I had the Dev Talk Show image in there, but it was a little, I couldn't see the code at that point. So, hey, if you're going to do it, promote appropriately.
No, I'm with you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Let me see. So what we want here is ng-rock. And have you guys used this?
Yeah.
No.
I always thought it was ngrok. Is it ng-rock or ngrok?
ngrok. Yeah.
I don't know.
GIF. I don't know.
Yeah. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. So do HTTP host header equals rewrite.
And that's a little hard to see on the stream. I don't know if you want to zoom on that, but that's a little tough. Yeah, that's much. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and we're going to rewrite it to 44397. Yeah.
This is heavy duty stuff going on here.
Now, Andy, you might remember this from building bots.
Oh, wow.
So what you guys can do is you can now that's not going to, hang on one second. Don't do that one yet. We're going to redo it.
No, I didn't know I didn't know what this was. And then I dropped up to ngrok.com and I went, wow, I had no idea what this was. Oh, this is amazing.
So here's what I want to get the HTTP without the SSL because there's another command for it. And I don't want to go down that rat hole right now. Properties. So
this is a whole new nugget going on right here for those of you.
Yeah, this is going to be another tip.
Yeah, viewers, If this is something you know about or don't know about, let us know. We always like to know what's good information and what's, maybe everybody in there is just like, oh, God, Rich is showing ngrok. Like, we've been using that for years. I doubt it, though. Mind blown. Mike Devaney says mind blown.
It says you run a command and you get an instant secure URL to your local host server. Yeah, you get an instant secure URL to your local host server through any NAT or firewall. And I was sitting there going, what is he doing? And now I'm thinking, whoa.
So if you guys want to copy that, you don't have to put the port on it. You just go to http e67425d2.nggrok.io.
Wait, let's put that in the chat. Okay.
Copying's tricky. So let's see if I can do this the right way.
Well, you might not have the chat open. Do you have it open?
Not on this machine now.
Why don't you ping it to one of us, like send it to one of us through Discord or anything you might have, and then we can post it.
Hang on. E67.
Discord or Skype. You can send it to me at Skype.
25. Hang in there.
Okay. Well, I could just write it down now at this point. Hang on.
Oh, sign it. Great.
Hang on. I'm going to post. Oh, Chris beat me to it. Okay, so Chris got it on here. So if we click this. Then we all. Oh, wait. Is it working? Didn't work for me.
Yeah, it tried to come back to localhost.
On your machine?
Yeah.
Yeah, mine's pointing to localhost also.
Well, let's see. Because I don't have any of you guys making requests. Oh, wait a minute. Temporary redirect.
Wow. Inconceivable. That's what the, by the way, you notice that at the top? ngrok by inconceivable. It did hit the right port though, so it was yeah. 44397.
That is okay. Interesting. Oh, okay. All right. So here's what it's doing.
We did HTTP. I thought does it matter? Should we do HTTPS instead, or is that?
It doesn't matter. No, that's because the port is matched to the HTTP. So here's really what it's doing. And when I've used it with building bots, and you basically put that on the bot channel sitting in Azure, the bot service sitting up in Azure. That URL then can find my machine with my code running locally. And you guys found my machine with my code running locally, but it said, well, this maps to localhost. And it's kind of right. It does. So, but there should be a way to, with one of those hosted, I don't know the other parts of the tool well enough, but so if I just do this, there's a whole bunch of different settings inside of here that you can configure so that it can map through. So whether it's changing up the host name or something like that, we've got to do. Sorry, I thought that was a way to very quickly open it up and let you guys try it out.
Well, why don't we?
No, that's okay.
You know what would be cool is if we, stay on track or something like that. But if we want to go over a little bit and come back and play with this, if you're up for that, I'm up for it.
I mean, we could also push it to Azure too.
Well, let's see that. Okay. In fact, this is what I was just going to ask: is that when you were sending messages, just purely on your local machine, I wanted to come back to the Azure SignalR service and just see what we're seeing right there. Yeah. That some connections did come across.
Yeah. So the red is our client connection.
Yeah.
And you can see that we've got 2 client connections into that, and then.
Because you had 2 browser windows open next to each other, side by side.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. And I think if I do something, let's see, if I try this. Now, there is a bit of a delay when it happens, but I could. What was the number? 44.
Not that 65416, is it?
No, 44397.
Mike, we're gonna have to start charging you admission, man. Or but if we make jokes like that, then he won't tell us all the cool stuff. But glad you're finding stuff that you like. I mean, even Chris, you're learning something new, right? Like I'm learning something new.
Yeah. I actually do have a SignalR app up in Azure that's wired up to GitHub Actions. I wonder if it could wire up to Rich's SignalR service quickly. But
we could do that, yeah.
Because I mean, I can certainly, like, everybody can use the app, but that's not demonstrating SignalR service. It's just demonstrating SignalR, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That is true. So there's a third one, and it does take, like I said, it takes a little bit for those connections to pop. I know when I did some testing, it took a good 15 minutes or so before the messages started to flow through. So they're not showing up in here on real time, at least not for what I saw. So yeah. So let's see. We could do one of two things. We could continue to try. Well, I guess three things. We could continue to try and open up the ports here so that you guys can access it via ngrok. We could take the application and publish it to Azure, and then this way you guys can all hit it from there and try it. Or we can take your application that you've got in GitHub and deploy that one and kind of retrofit it to use that.
Actually, isn't that true that if we, and I know we all have to pinch our nose and cover our ears, but if we did right-click publish in Visual Studio, wouldn't you get up in Azure Web Apps very quickly?
Extremely quickly, yes. So we could go back to, where's our app running?
We're doing that. It doesn't seem to be doing much good.
And then
sure
I guess
that button was going to do.
And then I guess if you published it, then all we have to do is take the secrets and add them as config in the portal, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Well, that's cool. That'll be educational too, and it shouldn't take, knock on wood, shouldn't take too long to publish.
Yeah. So I'm going to stop this.
Right. And I think what's nice about it is that I do have, so on my stream, I built this sample, but I want to stress that even though this works and it's functional, and I'm going to get that link over into all the different chats here. So that's what I built on my stream. That functions. People could use it right now, and they could send each other messages and everything, except that it's not using Azure SignalR service. In that particular case, that is an Azure web app that's being deployed. It's running an Azure app service, just like you're creating right now, Rich.
Yep.
And it is managing, like it is hosting SignalR right on that app service, which is an option. There's nothing wrong with that.
No,
it's that when you
not.
get into the multi-server scenario, that then you start to say, like, well, wait a second, I need something to manage the overall session between these two web servers in this web farm. How do I deal with that?
Mm-hmm.
So if you could, I just want to make sure I grok this. So the difference between SignalR in a web app, just self-hosted, is that what you would maybe call it, right? Versus when it's on Azure SignalR server. Just help me out with that again. I'm still sort of missing something there.
Yeah. Okay. So, a lot of us get started with SignalR and we get it working. And what I think maybe if you just go through the tutorial and you don't really stop, and SignalR is hosted on the web server itself in just your standard. You go in and you say add SignalR in your code the way Rich did it first. And so what that means is that the hub, the abstracted hub, is actually an endpoint on your app, on your IIS server if you're running in an on-prem scenario. Okay. In your web app if you're running in an Azure web app. The problem comes in the moment you turn this into a web farm. As soon as whether you do this on-prem or in the cloud, it doesn't matter. The moment you go into a web farm, you have a problem, because if Andy makes a connection to server A, and then the next time he comes back, he goes to server B, how does the messaging get synchronized?
I get what you're saying. So it's like that standard old load balancing problem that we've had with many other situations, but it's that same.
It's the same.
Okay.
It's kind of the problem you've had back with session servers, things like that, session state, which I hesitate to bring up because hopefully we're all trying our very best to avoid session state. Yeah. But it's the same problem, and so what happened in ASP.NET SignalR for .NET Framework is that problem was solved with what the team called a backplane. You basically would set up either SQL Server or Redis, or you could set up others because this was extensible. But let's be honest, everybody either used SQL Server or Redis because this was a complicated problem. And SQL Server would be like this data store, and the server would get written back to SQL Server, and then the other SignalR hubs on all the other servers had to say, oh, wait a second, something happened over on SQL Server. Let me get it and broadcast it out. And or it would do it on Redis, or I think you could also do Azure Service Bus, I think. Mm-hmm. And it turned out this wasn't an easy problem to solve, and the problem was left to be solved by you, the developer. So what Azure SignalR Service does is says, let us solve it for you in Azure, and you don't think about it. You just create a resource, and it's done.
So they're solving the problem. They might be doing that same thing behind the scenes for all we know, but who cares?
Right. So what we're not seeing in the demo yet to this point is if I went to my Azure web app, and I know we didn't quite show this today, but if I went to my Azure web app where it's hosting SignalR the traditional way, and I scaled that out to 2 or 3 machines, it wouldn't function properly anymore. Because you might connect to one of my web servers and Rich might connect to the other one of my web servers, and you'll be trying to send messages and they won't get sent to the whole group. Right. If I then instead said, okay, let me abandon the traditional approach and add Azure SignalR Service, then it would all work, and I wouldn't have really done anything. You know, so the demo here is like if Rich can get the web app published, let's say the web app was published, that would be impressive. But then even more impressive is go scale out the web app, and it should all keep working.
Right.
And that's something I can't do right now with the starter that I built last week. And again, I'm heading towards an end game, no pun intended, with the project. It's meant to be a game. And SignalR is great for games. It's exactly one of its great use cases. I always kind of say it's great for games. It's great for what I call news. And I preface that by meaning like the user's connected, but you want to flash a little news item at them. Maybe they have a new task has been dropped into their box, or maybe there's just some new company news. I mean, whatever.
Yeah, I always thought it's good use cases. Also, like we're about to go down from maintenance. Not that we want to take our apps down from maintenance, but hey, if we need to, it's so cool to just post out a message that says, "Hey, you're on this site. In 15 minutes, we're taking it down," or something like that. You know, there's a lot of great use cases. A lot of great use cases.
Yeah. A use case that we should be using here on the Dev Talk Show is when we go live, we should change our front page. And if a person's sitting there on the front page, it should change to the stream.
Yeah.
Like it should just happen right before their eyes. And SignalR could help us do that.
That's what we should be doing. So, so Rich looks like he's sort of busy attacking this thing. And So let's see. It's 9:40. We've been at this a little while. I think we're still cool. I'm still cool to hang in there for a while.
Yep.
You know, was that Rich?
As soon as we can get I have to sign into my Azure subscription.
Yeah, right. So you're doing some stuff. I'm going to switch back to the 3-shot even, so that way we're chit chatting a little bit here. So what else do we have going on? So Chris, are you streaming on a regular schedule?
No, I don't have a schedule yet. It's basically what I've decided is when I sit down to work on some of these side projects, I'm just gonna start streaming them. I would like to have something more reliable because I know people want to have a regular time to tune in, but I'm just not in that position yet. And although I think it might be a little bit easier now, but you know, we're still kind of learning what this schedule is going to be like with my wife's a high school teacher and my daughter's in elementary school. So they're getting up every day and sitting down at desks and working on Chromebooks, and then I come up and I work, at my job too. So it's been interesting.
Yeah. So, things are so unusual for us all right now. So, I usually stream Wednesdays at noon. I did not stream today. The reason I didn't stream today, it's interesting. It's almost like I think the opposite of what people would expect. Well, you're home more now. You should have time to do it. But there's a lot of demand. We're all feeling these demands from our family, and rightfully so. This isn't a complaint, but it's like, I feel guilty sitting up here at from noon to 1 doing a stream when my my wife and kids are downstairs and they need help with homework, or they just want a break and they want to see a different face down there. I don't blame them, And today I was just like, I'm just gonna hang out with them because it's interesting, and it's like things are crazy these days, So I didn't stream, but normally Wednesdays at noon, and I've been enjoying that time frame. I like to kind of lock it in, but my app is taking a long time to write, 1 hour at a time. It's to the point where it's annoying me, and I think I might just bang out some code, even off stream on my own. Or maybe I'll just throw the stream on. I haven't figured it out yet. But this whole, streaming is interesting. You talk, you're explaining things and stuff like that. And sometimes I just want to go and just write some code on this thing and get it to the place I'd like to be. Because I think I would like to do, this is a great example. I'd like to put SignalR into the app that I'm working on. Okay, I'm getting the signal to that. This is it's getting that time of night, and they're like, Andy's getting a little loud. And
we're all going to bed. We have school in the morning.
Yeah. So, but I'm a loud talker, so it's cool. And Mike's, what does he say here? My 9 to 5 is wall-to-wall meetings during the day, without the hallway. Yeah. So we set this up in my office too. Without the hallway conversations and the easy conversations, we find more meetings, more structured meetings. And I find that this is another reason why I didn't want to stream today. My eyes are tired. Now, Chris, see, this might be different for you. I'm really curious to hear your opinion because you work at home full-time all the time. And I'm used to shifting from staring at a computer to walking into meetings and talking to people and looking at the whiteboard or whatever. And I find that only when everything is on the PC right here, this distance from me, right, my eyes are tired at the end of the day. It's like a different thing.
Yeah. So it drove me to get a bigger monitor. So my centerpiece monitor is like a lot. I mean, now it's a 27-inch. When I first started doing this, I think I had like a 21-inch. And then I got into a 24, and then recently I went to a 27. And the other thing I did is that you may notice that I have a Bluetooth earpiece, which at first I kind of thought was silly. But what it does allow me to do is if I'm not the centerpiece of the meeting and somebody's just going to be talking, then I might get up and might stand behind this chair or even kind of pace a little bit because otherwise you will just sit here all day, and that's not the best thing for you.
Yeah. I do get up and walk around. Rich, you look like you're ready.
Can you switch back to my screen?
You got it.
So we've got our app created. One of the things I wanted to show, because I think it's kind of important, in Visual Studio, doing that right-click publish.
Are you sharing your screen?
Thank you.
Okay. Because I'm still seeing your old locked screen, and that's what people are seeing for a sec. So.
Yeah. So
yeah,
you guys should be good now,
Mike,
right?
you have a standing desk. I just want to say, if you have a standing desk, if you don't mind, post a link and tell us what brand you have, because I'm kind of curious myself. Go ahead, Rich. Sorry.
It's okay.
I guess I could have typed that to him.
No, that's all right.
Okay. You see, we have our application that got created in Azure. It gives us all the specifics of where it's dropped and all of those things. One of the interesting pieces it did tell us, your application is making use of SignalR. Now, I can't make that text any bigger, but your application is making use of SignalR. For environments that need to scale, we strongly recommend adding this dependency of the Azure SignalR service. So I can write in here, now bring up this dialog that says, yep, I want you to add an Azure SignalR service. And then this is the one we're using because I created one earlier that I named inappropriately. We're going to do that. And what this is doing is it's wiring up that there is a environment variable package that needs to be included in there, but it's also making the connection for the app settings into that SignalR that we created. So, Chris, while you mentioned, hey, we might, as part of a deployment pipeline or something like that, have to go back and add the app settings, it's taking care of that for us here.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay.
So now I'm going to publish.
That's pretty cool. I figured we'd have to do that, but look at that.
And then the beauty of it is here is you'll get a essentially that URL that you guys can use and talk to.
Oh yeah, cool. I should copy it. Like I said, if you don't have chat open, you can Skype it to us or something. You want?
Oh, that's right. We got Skype too.
So let's sum this up. We created an Azure SignalR service in the Azure portal.
Yep.
That's just a resource. It's just like creating a web app or creating an Azure SQL instance. So it's just another resource you create. You got the settings for that, and you plugged that into. We happen to use user secrets. And those automatically were picked up by the add Azure SignalR extension method. Like that process basically will pick them up out of configuration without you doing anything. It is extensible. If you want to have more options, you can do that in the code. But if you want it to be no code, all config. But since that configuration is secret, we used user secrets. We didn't just throw it into appsettings.development.json or appsettings.json.
Yeah.
And then now you've published it to Azure because that's the simplest way for us to let other people try it, including ourselves. And I can see that when I enter the app, the first thing it's asking me for is my name. So I know that's not on screen here, but I've actually joined. And so that says to me that it is up.
Yep. So this that was where I told it to put it. Well, let's just go find.
All right, I joined.
Yeah, so both Andy and I have joined, and look, we got some more people coming in.
Chat? Oh, you did put it in
Yeah,
the
go
chat?
for it.
Oh, I see. I see. It's already in there.
Okay, pretty cool. Look at that. So that's an Azure web app. It's using Razor Pages, but if you're totally new to ASP.NET, you don't have to fear Razor Pages because 99.9% of the view work was just straight HTML and JavaScript. And that's the great thing about SignalR is it has a JavaScript and TypeScript client. And when I use that word client, it's not a big scary word. It just means there's a library for you to use in your JavaScript and TypeScript code. There's also libraries for .NET, which sounds kind of weird, right? But you could have a .NET application. It could be a desktop application, maybe WinForms or WPF, and it could also join in and I know we always demo chat, but you could have a WPF application that benefits from getting notifications from a web server. I mean, that's something any app could use. It doesn't have to be a web app. You could use this in your Xamarin apps. You can use this. I don't know all the clients that are released yet. I remember for .NET Framework there were clients for iOS and so on. I just don't know off the top of my head what all the clients are for ASP.NET Core SignalR, but that's pretty cool. So that all works, and in reality, the only difference between if you're learning SignalR, the only thing you really did differently is you add Azure SignalR.
Yeah.
And the connections.
Big.
Yep.
Well, yeah.
That was it. Everything
and it was
else
that was the easy part. That wasn't hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So that's pretty cool. And now if Now is this not this one, is the web app scaled? Not that it has to be, but if it were.
Yep, that's a good question.
What I think might be interesting is it might be interesting for me to go take an app service app. I'm thinking like demo, right?
Mm-hmm.
And scale it without using Azure SignalR. And I want to see it break. I want to show everybody that it doesn't work because user A goes to web server A, user B goes to web server B. Their messages don't cross-pollinate.
Right.
They don't go across the message bus, and so we have a problem. How do we solve the problem? Azure SignalR.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to be the Debbie Downer here, or the reality check, let me just throw this in here, and I don't want to put Rich on the spot in this particular case, but like, what's the cost setup here? So now we're going to a service. We have to pay. I assume there's some costs. Do we know anything? Do you know anything about that off the top of your head, or?
So scale. Should be nope. 1 second, because we did look at it when we started up.
I'm sorry.
Settings.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Usually
Properties.
under scale. Oh, that's blurred out anyway.
Yeah.
SignalR.
So the standard pricing, at
you
least
gotta
sitting
click the
here.
tier. There you go. Click that tier, I think, right? Yeah.
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 So
it says
that's
$1.61 a day in the documentation.
That's kind of about right. We're $49 for the month,
Right.
per unit.
So it's right. We were talking about units in the beginning, and I was busy working on sound, like making sure this thing was working, and I'm like, oh, I missed all that, and I don't want you to have to go through that again. So I will have to figure that out, or I'll talk to you offline about that.
And prices are estimated. It depends on the subscription you have. It depends on your EA agreement if you're an enterprise customer. All of those, prices bigger than a breadbox kind of scale, right?
But I mean,
compare that to a standard, app service plan, right?
Right.
An app service plan is going to be certainly much more than that cost for the price of a month.
Yeah, so this seems, what I would say is this sort of seems, affordable, reasonable in the big scope of things. Like for me, do I want to have a bunch of these things running? No, it's going to add up in money. My organization, where we have a decent sized Azure bill in the first place, this isn't changing the bill that dramatically. Like I don't need approval for this one,
Right.
Yeah, right.
You can almost expense it.
That's the way I look at some of these things. Like, do I need to go ask somebody and say, oh my God, I'm going to be putting a chunk in our Azure bill? Or is it like, all right, it's cool. So that's cool. Thanks.
Yeah. And you can see the connections here. These 5 connections are for the app service that we have connected to this Azure SignalR service. And you see we have the number of clients there. So even having one app service up and connected, it's going to mean 5 connections back out to that box, because it leaves those up and persists those once that connection happens. If I was to restart the app server because maybe I deployed something, or I was just kind of rebooting the box for whatever reason, then those connections would go away and have to get reinstantiated essentially.
So that is cool. I know they're just graphs, but it gives me confidence that we actually used Azure.
That is true. And it's weird. I don't know where it put this app site.
What do you mean? Oh, you mean it's not in your resource group?
You're not sure which resource group it landed in?
Well, just do a search.
It tells me it landed here.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when you went over there, you couldn't find it?
No.
Is it in the wrong sub?
No, that's the right sub.
Okay.
Well, let's go back and look.
Let me do...
Just do a refresh on the page or something like that. You probably have some filter on the thing that's like hiding.
Let me try this.
Yeah, so let's see. Just went to my portal for work, and it said $49 a month a unit. Mike says that. Yeah, so this to me is not a big deal, kind of service, which is cool.
Right.
And a lot of the services that are like this, with these little mini messages that just go in and out of them, they're cheap,
Okay.
which is cool. They're cheap to use.
Yeah, I don't know why. When I brought it down to the other window, now it's here. So, so this is it. This is the web service that we created, that web app, right? TD web app. Yeah, same name. Okay. So we could, if we wanted to, we could restart it, and then you would see that would lose the connections over there. If we go into our configuration,
there are those secrets. Yeah.
So you can see there's the connection string.
Right.
SignalR sticky server mode.
Interesting.
That one I was not aware of. Yeah.
So that's usually from, I'm guessing, like from a load balancing, like if you maybe do load balance these, well, this is the app service.
This is the web app. So if we scaled out,
your connections would be sticky.
Yes. So we could go ahead and spin up another instance.
Make sure you
would still hit it off. What's that?
Make sure you turn these off when you're done, right?
Oh yeah, we'll delete the whole group when we're done.
Yeah.
So that auto scale configuration happens. Give it a few minutes, but you'll probably see another 5 connections happen against that other box as well.
Yeah, so this was a cool show. I mean, I liked. Oh,
it's pretty neat. It's the first
site
time.
Just went down as you did something, or at least it went. Not the site, like in your little demo site.
Somebody
F5. Yeah. I guess it times out or something like that. There it goes.
No, I think it probably had to bring down. It must have had to bring something down to scale up.
Yeah. So
no, that if you're scaling up, that machine that's running is fine. It's going to spin up another instance on that app service plan that we have created. So it shouldn't impact the machine that's running or whatever service is running. Okay. You're bringing up a new one to go alongside of it.
Well, I certainly just like Andy, I got a message in the app that said the connection failed, which is cool. That means that client code is a little bit more defensive than most, because in my sample, if the connection goes down, it's who cares, right? Like I'm not even looking for that right now. See that? I will look for it in the future. I'm interested in that, but I wonder if I don't know. But the point is I rushed back to it now and it works. And Andy and I have already chatted in there a little bit. So here's one of my favorite features of ASP.NET SignalR. It really is one of my favorite technologies, and now I know that the backplane problem is solved. I don't have to worry about it, and that if I wanted just to mess around for free with friends, that the free tier works. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that
was good stuff.
All right,
awesome.
And,
well.
Yeah, pretty cool, right?
Well, first of all, Rich, I want to thank you for putting that demo together. Certainly, I think we all know, all three of us know, that the amount of work that we each put in order to demo something, right? So that was cool.
Thanks, man. That was fun to do. It was one of those things that's pretty interesting to kind of play around with, and good to share it with all you guys.
Yeah. All right. Well, any last words about SignalR? If not, I do want to say that if you're watching us on Mixer or Twitch and you haven't followed the channel, please hit the follow button so that you'll get notifications when we go live. And that is Wednesday nights at 8:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. If you're watching on YouTube, you can subscribe to this channel for those same notifications. But at the same time, if you like this video, hit that thumbs up and we will know that these are the kind of topics you want to hear about. And if you want to continue the conversation, you can do so in the comments. If you're watching us in the future on YouTube, then again, reach out to us in the comments and let us know what you think. You can always find us on our Twitter. We have some announcements on Twitter at the Dev Talk Show, and you can find us on our website, thedevtalkshow.com. Every one of these shows is archived on YouTube. The quick way to the YouTube channel, video.thedevtalkshow.com. So after all
Meetup.
that.
And we have Meetup.
Yeah, we are on Meetup.
Which you can see the
future
schedule.
event announcements are on Meetup. Yeah. Yep.
It's a lot.
All right. So, anyways, after all that, hope you had fun tonight, and I hope you learned something, not just about Azure SignalR and about maybe SignalR and ASP.NET in general. We had some awesome tips for IntelliSense. I can't wait to go play around a little bit with ngrok. I had no idea. And Andy and I each remembered that 2 @ will escape an @ in MVC or in Razor views. I think, wasn't there also like an HTML raw function?
Oh, gosh.
That might be for another show if we really dive into Razor views. But if not, why don't you guys let us know down in the comments or anything, and reach out to us anytime. And definitely the 3 of us are happy to answer questions that you send straight to Twitter or maybe to a comment on YouTube. So I want to thank the folks that participated in chat tonight, too. It was great to see Mike Devaney. And we also did hear from Jason Kurtz, who was here last week. He popped in, and Stashu.net popped in. And thanks for joining us. We really do appreciate the feedback live. It really does help, and it keeps us going. And if you joined us, we're just glad you're here. I don't want to put any pressure on anybody to go down and join the chat. We are happy for every viewer that was here tonight and that catches us on YouTube.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that'll do it for this Wednesday night here on April 15th, 2020. And we'll catch you next time. So I want to thank Andy for his hard work in the producer chair. Yep. Thanks for keeping the show going and getting everything working. This is not an easy setup, and you've got it going. Now I've got to do the same thing. And thanks to Rich for the awesome demo. And so on behalf of Rich Ross and Andy Schwamm, I'm Chris Gomez, and we will see you next Wednesday on the Dev Talk Show.